ahead and grab the hubcap itself, give it a gentle tug away. Using a 19mm socket, let's go ahead and remove the lug nuts. Once the lug nuts are off, go ahead and remove the wheel. I'm going to use a 7mm socket, and we're going to loosen and remove this bolt here. Remove that bracket. Next, we're going to use our 13mm socket and loosen this nut and remove this bracket. Now we're going to use our pliers here, and we're just going to pinch the little tabs on the back. Do this for all three and remove the ABS wire from the upper control arm. We're going to apply some rust penetrant to the ball joint hardware. We're going to go ahead and use a 21mm boxed end wrench, and we're going to loosen this upper control arm nut on the ball joint. Now we're going to loosen the nut. We're not going to take it off all the way. I'll just make sure that the nut is unthreaded to the point where it's at the end of the ball joint stud. And on the upper control arm, we have the forward mounted bolt right here that goes through, and then we have the rearward mounted bolt in the back here. We're going to go ahead and use our 21mm wrench to go ahead and break those free. With that bolt free and moving along, let's go ahead to the rearward bolt. Now we're going to use our 21mm socket and ratchet on that back bolt there so we can clear our brake lines. I'm going to go ahead and break that free. We're going to go ahead and use our hammer, and we're going to hit the knuckle here. This should release the upper ball joint from the control arm. We also have a jack underneath the rest of the suspension under the lower control arm and the coil, so that way it'll kind of support that so it doesn't drop out of the way. For the upper control arm, in order to make that a little bit easier, we can go ahead and jack up the suspension. Now we're going to go ahead and lower the jack on the control arm. Let's go ahead and continue to loosen this rear control arm bolt. Going to remove that bolt, and then we'll do the same for the front. You want to be careful when you remove this here, the entire control arm with the knuckle will now be loose. So you want to be careful to support the knuckle as well as the control arm so it doesn't all fall on you. So we want to go ahead and support the knuckle by using a strap here. And go up and around and back up on here. That'll support this knuckle so it doesn't fall out. Let's go ahead and continue to remove this forward mounted control arm bolt. With the two bolts out, we're going to pull this forward a little bit and work that control arm out of the frame. that upper ball joint out. And remove your control arm. Let's go ahead and take our new control arm, line this up. I'm going to try and work that back into the frame here. I'm going to use our rubber mallet here to go ahead and tap that up and into place. With this being close, we're going to go ahead and get our knuckle lined up and get our ball joint popped back in here. So we're going to go ahead and use a small pry bar and just get up underneath. We're going to work our control arm up into place here. And we did apply a little bit of blue Loctite to our bolts here. Once we just get that bolt in there, we're not going to thread it because obviously it's not lined up. Let's go ahead and move to the back bolt and get that lined up. So once we have our bolt pressed all the way through, I'm going to go ahead and start threading that bolt into place. All right, get the back bolt in and snug. Let's move to the forward one. Now we can go ahead and raise that suspension up. Work that ball joint into that knuckle. Give it a couple taps. Pop that in. And we'll get our ball joint nut started on the bottom side. All right, so we're going to go ahead and relocate our jack out. Now we know your vehicle is already supported. We're going to go ahead and raise up this wheel. Specifically, what we're trying to do is compress and get our vehicle into its natural ride height. So we're going to pretty much raise this up and let the suspension travel. We can go ahead and remove our straps at this point. So we're going to take that off. And what we want to do is get our suspension into its travel position. And once we're there, now we want to go ahead and torque the upper control arm bolts. So when it's tight, it's in its riding or driving position. We're going to torque these upper bolts to 118 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to go ahead and lower the suspension. We're going to go ahead and zip off our upper sway bar end link here using a 13mm socket. That's going to allow us to get room to that nut to properly torque that. We're using our 15mm socket to go ahead and remove the nut off the sway bar end link. And we're going to torque our upper ball joint nut to 74 foot-pounds. We'll go ahead and push our sway bar end link through. Get our nut started. Then we'll go ahead and tighten that down. Let's go ahead and install our ABS wire and bracket. We're going to install our back unit here. Snug that down. I'll go ahead and install our ABS wire, push these clips on. Continue this all the way around the top. Lock that in place. Go ahead and install your wheel. Let's go ahead and get the lug nut started here. Let's go ahead and snug down the lug nuts. I'm going to go ahead and torque the lug nuts down to 103 foot-pounds. Do this in a crisscross or star pattern. Now, if you have wheel caps like we do, you want to go ahead and identify a small little half-moon notch in the wheel cap. This will identify where the valve stem for your air will be located. Go ahead and line that up with the valve stem, and then tap the cap on.